Welcome to you all. I'm Fred Kemp. I'm President and CEO of the Atlantic Council. So this is a truly important event this evening. And I said to Jason Marsack, the Senior Director of the Arch Latin America Center, and Adrian, thank you, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. I'll come back to that in a moment. But I said to Jason, you know, we should find a place with high ceilings. And as usual, Jason Marsack and his team overperforms. So congratulations. Congressman Royce and I had a conversation about this building, the Thomas Jefferson Building, this library, the Library of Congress. And Thomas Jefferson had an ambition, and he wanted to one-up Alexandria. Says Congressman Royce. And he created what is now our oldest federal cultural institution, one of the largest libraries in the world, serving Congress, of course, but much more. Thomas Jefferson's original collection, 6,487 books, was the beginning of this. It expanded from there. It survived, and by the way, the British are our closest allies now, but in 1812 that wasn't the case, and it survived some burning where some of the collection was lost. The reason I say all this, and again in a nod to Adrian, is we are celebrating 200 years of diplomatic relations between the US and Colombia. And like the Library of Congress, there's been resilience, there's been durability, there's been focus, and there's no end point. It's going to be a continuum. It's going to be a constant building. There's no spot, Mr. Ambassador, Madam Vice President, where we're finished. We're just going to keep building. So on behalf of the Atlantic Council, thank you for joining us tonight for the launch of our book, Allies, 27 Bold Ideas to Reimagine the US-Colombia Relationship. And wait till you see the authors in this book, and it's just an amazing collection. When you think about how many important individuals have been invested in this relationship. And tonight's program, like our book, celebrates 200 years of diplomatic relations between the United States and Colombia. It also looks to the future and to the road ahead for the bilateral partnership. We love to convene. We think this is really important to do to bring this community of influence together, but it wouldn't have any meaning if we weren't also moving the needle on policy, moving the needle on issues, and that's what we do. In the past 2 decades, Colombia has become a strategic U.S. partner, contributing security expertise to its neighbors and across the globe and providing an expanding market for U.S. products and services and global products and services. And at the Atlantic Council, we believe that this moment, this 200th anniversary, opens the door for a renewed U.S. partnership with Colombia. It's good to look back, but it should only be in the service of looking forward. One that speaks to the broader importance of such a strategic alliance based on a shared vision for a more secure, a more prosperous, and a more sustainable future. It's why we first launched our US-Colombia Task Force in 2017. And Jason, I think we did it here, right? A group of experts co-chaired by Senators Roy Blunt and Ben Cardin. And I'm honored to extend a special welcome to Her Excellency Marta Lucia Ramirez, Vice President of Colombia. So please join me in applauding the Vice President. We're honored to have you here tonight. As you may recall, Madam Vice President, in April 2020, when our entire world changed in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic, President Duque was the first foreign leader for a new thing that we wanted to experiment with called Atlantic Council Front Page. The idea was, well, maybe we can't be in person, but we could exponentially grow our audience digitally with digital platforms. And he was the first leader we used in this platform, and it did exponentially grow our audience. So we know that the world is now hybrid. We're live streaming now. We're going to reach a much larger audience that is here. We're going to have bigger impact, but there's nothing to replace the personal interactions that we're all going to have this evening. Since then, we've been privileged to host President Duque 3 times while continuing to explore new avenues for US-Colombia cooperation. We do understand that there is a political process underway in Colombia that will not change the relationship. It will just be, we go in democracies through changes, but it doesn't change the basics of our values, the basics of our relationships, and that's what we're here to celebrate tonight. We regret that President Duque cannot join us tonight due to complications in his agenda in the middle of this electoral season. And then, now I want to turn to Adrienne Arsht and to welcome her and thank her. Adrienne is she has titles. One of them is Atlantic Council Executive Vice Chair. She's the founder of the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center and of the Adrienne Arsht Rockefeller Foundation Resilience Center. But Adrienne, you just make things happen. You're a wonderful friend, you're a great visionary, and without you, this initiative, this book, and so much more at the Atlantic Council would not be a reality. So please join me in applauding Adrienne Arsht. This book shows the importance of building on the successes of a strong US-Colombia relationship. And it demonstrates that when working with friends and allies, and even unsurmountable odds can be overcome. As I wrote the book's foreword with Jason, uncertainty, we reflected on how such deep uncertainty clouded Colombia's future, really its future quite fundamentally, Mr. Ambassador, as little as 20 years ago. And we wrote, now the question is what would come of U.S. interests in Latin America without the support and leadership of Colombia, often referred to as the keystone of U.S. foreign policy in the region. We continued, how can we build on this partnership to answer the challenges that we're going to face in the decades to come? And the answers to these questions are yet to be determined. The essays in this book are meant to spark new ideas and new approaches to maintaining strong U.S.-Colombian ties and offer an example for future U.S. engagement in our hemisphere. Take a copy of this forward-looking publication, which the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center at the Atlantic Council co-produced with the Latin American program at the Wilson Center. And so let me also salute the leader of the Wilson Center. If you could rise and if we could applaud you and your center as well. Thank you so much. Now I'd like to turn it over to my friend, we get a lot of good ambassadors in Washington. People try to send us their best, but he overperforms. So the Ambassador of Colombia to the United States, Juan Carlos Pinzon, will provide brief remarks on the bicentennial celebration of U.S.-Colombia relations. Mr. Ambassador, as always, it's a profound honor to work with you, to work with your team at the embassy, to work with your government. The stage is yours.
Buenas noches. We couldn't have a better venue, right? Isn't this beautiful? I think all of us will remember being here for this special day. First, Madam Vice President, it's an honor to have you here, and thank you for being present and leading our Colombian government tonight. Of course, to my friend Fred Kempe, to my good friend Mark Green, to my beloved Adrienne Arsht, thank you for everything you do for us. There's so many important people tonight, so many important people. Here we have dignitaries, CEOs, leaders former ministers, former ambassadors. So to all of you, my friends, fellow Colombians, great to have you here. And to all the American friends, it's really an honor to have you here. Of course, to my colleague ambassadors, thank you for coming. You guys are so kind for being here. And I should mention the teams that have been very much engaged into this. No doubt that Jason, Camila, and the full team deserve all the credit. Thank you for that effort. Of course, together with the Mark Green's team, where is Cindy? Cindy Aronson, thank you for your support. And no doubt that my colleagues and wonderful team of the Colombian Embassy, thank you for being here tonight. Juan Gonzalez, friends all, thank you for being here. Let me give you some remarks and some reminds to put in a way. First, I think the book is beautiful. You have it already in your hands. The name couldn't be better selected, Jason. Allies. And we feel proud of that. We love to be allies of the United States because that hasn't been recent. That hasn't been just because of the team of today. It has been because of 200 years of accomplishments and working together because we share the same set of values. And that should inspire us to the future. And I think that's the value of this book. We're thinking here, of course, about inspiration and the great things we have done, but about the great things we can do together. Our people, people to people. I think that's what is more important. So really, thank you for being all. I think this is an incredible compilation of essays about the Colombia-US future partnership. Seeing this compendium is a special privilege, and I have to say it's emotional for me. I'm always gratified when I see ideas come to an end, to happen. Last time I was ambassador, just 5 years ago, we envisioned creating a task force, as you well discussed, Fred, to discuss on the relationship between Colombia and the United States. I have to remind our friend Peter Schechter of the time. He was the lead of the program. I personally visited Senator Cardin, Senator Blunt, to invite them to be part of this idea, and so many other members. The task force was established. And its first report was launched exactly here in this same venue. Jason Marzak and his team have kept that idea alive for more than 5 years. Thank you for that, Arian. Thank you for that, Jason. Of course, Fred, all the team. Then I came back 10 months ago as ambassador again. And of course, I love to be here in Washington. This is a wonderful city. But the world has changed a lot. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We have been in the middle of very dramatic changes in world democracy. Somehow democracy is under threat. Many things are going on. And not to forget that as we speak, Europe is in the middle of a war, the greatest ever since World War II. So this has been a special and a different time. And of course, for us was a great time because we were celebrating the 200 years of our diplomatic relations. We had this idea of asking some of the most relevant thinkers, thoughtful leaders, policymakers from both our countries to give us lights, to envision what should come next. And that's when we approached the Atlantic Council, and they immediately partner with the Wilson Center. Actually, I have to say, part of the story is that they even touched the CSIS. And you gather all these wonderful group of people. So that's what we have today, this wonderful book being launched today at the U.S. Library of Congress. As you said, no better venue for a book. It is a true honor to be here and to see this project finally realized. I really want to thank all the team, the Alvin Arch Latin American Center of the Atlantic Council, the Wilson Center, and the whole team for making this happen. I am very thankful to ISA, to Ecopetrol, to Semana, and to ProCaps. Their support, their generous economic support allows us to be here tonight. I am also certainly grateful to each of the contributors of the essays. So many great people, as they say, 27 bold ideas, 27 leaders from different perspectives were spending part of their time to think through what do we do next. I should mention some of the authorities. Of course, President Clinton. He has been extremely relevant to the history of US-Colombia relationship. Let's never forget Plan Colombia, that still is on, and because of that, somehow our country has prevailed and moved forward. Of course, Senator Blunt, Senator Cardin, General Petraeus, Admiral Fowler, Chairman Meeks, Ranking Member McCall, and of course, a good friend like Howard Buffett, the ambassadors Kevin Whitaker and Mike McKinley, and of course, Ambassador Mark Green, thank you for that. Should mention many other Colombians that are part of this project, but I will end by thanking my very admired Carolina Barco and my very good friend Luis Alberto Moreno for being part of this project, as many, many others. If I didn't mention all of you, it's because you deserve, each of you, your own credit. So thank you for being part of all this. Well, the 200th anniversary of diplomatic relations is an opportunity to reflect on a historic and enduring relationship. It is also a time to consider where our partnership can continue to flourish. This, of course, includes building on our shared values and our mutual commitment to defending democracy, freedom, and protecting human rights. Our future also, no doubt, holds many opportunities to expand trade and investment and create prosperity, advance the green economy, and deploy new technologies that will benefit both of our countries. On my own essay, my focus was to think about the security partnership, which is especially vital for creating a prosperous future, not only for Colombia, but for the hemisphere. And not only for the hemisphere, but somehow to contribute to global stability. That's what we envision. As I mentioned in the article, I have been personally touched by the positive power of the security partnership. I was brought to the United States in the 1980s as a child, when my father, a Colombian soldier, participated in a military education program, the kind of exchanges that are the hallmark of the US-Colombia relationship. As my life has progressed, as well known, from that exposure to the United States, I have probably become one of the Colombians who has been more connected to the US-Colombia relationship that has become strategic. So when I speak about the Security Alliance, I do not only do it from a professional perspective. I frankly do it from my heart, from my commitment, and from a very personal vision. Making our region more secure means keeping Colombia secure. Let's not forget about it. As I said in the article, a stronger Colombia can support democracy and freedom in the Western Hemisphere. A weaker Colombia opens the door for violence and instability in the region. Let's make no mistake about it. So what do we do and what do we need to ensure that Colombia does not fail or fall? We have a lot of internal work to do, like consolidating peace and stability, modernizing our justice system, and definitely creating conditions for greater and more equal opportunity for individuals. We need new and innovative solutions as well. One idea I propose is to create a cancel culture. Listen to me, a cancel culture for cocaine based on the destruction of it causes to lives and to the environment while funding crime and rogue regimes. Cancel culture. It's what the young people says now. Let's make use of their ideas. Stop consuming cocaine. That will be the greatest thing that can happen to the country, but somehow to the region. This is just one of the many areas where even stronger security ties between Colombia and the United States will be critical to a shared future at a time in which Colombia has become and has been designated by President Biden, thank you to President Biden, as a major non-NATO ally. And it will be a prosperous future for both our countries because ours is a special relationship rooted in shared values and people-to-people connections. The more that I travel along the United States, the more that I find Colombians that are incredible. They participate in the science, they are in the arts, they are in the academia, they are in politics, they are civic leaders, they are integrated into US life. How much we can take advantage of that, both our nations, about Colombian Americans and American Colombians. I want, again, to thank everyone for their time and talents, and the Atlantic Council and the Wilson Center for its long-standing commitment and partnership. As you see, I'm excited about the future. We are expected to have a great future, but we need to work on it. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our speakers and moderators, Jason Marzak, Senior Director of the Atlantic Council's Adrian Arsht Latin America Center, and Cynthia Arnson, Distinguished Fellow at the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars.
Well, good evening. What an incredible venue to celebrate a book launch here in the Great Hall of the Library of Congress. I think my dreams have now finally been achieved as of tonight to launch a book here. But of course, what you see actually, if everyone look behind you, the arch in the back of the room, that arch has a sculpture titled "The Students," and which fittingly represent the pursuit of knowledge from both the old perspective on the right side and the new perspective on the left side. And I think just fitting for this room and for this book today, what we're going to focus on today is just the one side of that sculpture, right? We're only going to focus on the new perspectives tonight because that's what this book is all about. Cindy, my colleague Camila Hernandez, and I worked over an intense 4 months. This book was commissioned, edited, published over the course of 4 months, probably setting a new record here for the Library of Congress. And we had the privilege to work with nearly 30 authors contributing to this amazing publication. Our book, as discussed, comes at a pivotal moment for US-Colombia ties. June 19th not only marks the bicentennial of the relationship, but as alluded to before, also Colombia's second round of voting in its presidential elections. I think whatever the outcome in those elections, what will be important is to continue to deepen and expand the US-Colombia partnership, recognizing new areas of opportunity in a rapidly changing world. We're going to explore all that in the next 30 minutes or next 20 minutes. I'm delighted that we have a fantastic group of speakers here. Juan Gonzalez joining us in the middle. Juan serves as the Special Assistant to the President of the United States and also Senior Director for the Western Hemisphere at the U.S. National Security Council. And I think probably even more appropriate for this discussion today is a native of beautiful Cartagena, Colombia. So we can get into that later. Joining us as well are 3 contributors to Allies, 27 Bold Ideas to Reimagine the US-Colombia Relationship, who are also members of our US-Colombia Task Force. Carolina Barco is a former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Colombia and former Ambassador of Colombia to the United States. Her essay, called Build on Shared Global Priorities, is featured in the first chapter on the book, which looks at the road ahead for the US-Colombia relationship. Maria Claudia Lacouture is Executive Director of the Colombian American Chamber of Commerce and also President of Aliadas. She is also former Minister of Commerce, Industry, and Tourism in Colombia. Her essay, Diversify the Bilateral Agenda, appears in the 4th chapter on promoting inclusive economic growth. And I see people thumbing through the book as I'm saying this, which is fantastic. And Kevin Whitaker is a former U.S. Ambassador to Colombia, and also, I'm proud to say, a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Adrian Arsht Latin America Center. Kevin's essay, Learn from a Democratic Culture, is in the 3rd chapter on strengthening democracy and the rule of law. Also, fittingly, that chapter we dedicated to Secretary Madeleine Albright for all of her work over the years on democracy and rule of law. So you'll see that dedication to Secretary Albright and a very important quote from the Secretary to begin that chapter. Many other contributors are here tonight, so I'd actually like to take a moment to ask all of the contributors to this book who are here tonight, if you could please just take a moment and stand up so you could be recognized for your contributions. I know there are many of you here tonight. Please, no need to be, I saw Mike, I saw Rebecca, I saw others, Paula, thank you. We would have had a second panel, but then we would have been here till 10 o'clock at night. But thank you so much. Before beginning our discussion, I'd also like to recognize and extend a special thank you to the companies and associations who helped make this publication and event possible. The ProCaps Group, Semana, Ecopetrol, ISA, Azoka Flores, and the Cámara de Comercio de Bogotá. So this panel discussion, I'm going to lead the first round of questions. We're going to look at the what can be still accomplished on the relationship, what are some of the best opportunities, and then Cindy will guide us on a second round on what can be improved. We're going to cover a lot of ground in this conversation. Anything actually is on the table. Juan and I were talking about anything is on the table, including the fact that one of our authors is John Leguizamo from the film Encanto. So in this panel, we actually can talk about Bruno as well. So anything can really go tonight. But Juan, let me start with you. What do you see as the best opportunities for strengthening the relationship and really for deepening the strong collaboration between the U.S. and Colombia? And frankly, within those, what do you think should be prioritized?
Well, thank you, Jason, for the opportunity to be here and to share the stage with people I have high respect for, and for the work of the Atlantic Council in putting together this book, and just the leadership that the Adrian Arsh Center has really had on Latin America and Washington. I want to start by I do agree that the title of the book is incredibly compelling. There's another book that is probably one of my favorite books on Colombia, that also has a catchy title and really speaks to the conversation we're having. Many of you maybe have read it, David Bushnell's book, Colombia, A Nation in Spite of Itself. It's probably one of my favorite books. I read it a lot. You do ask yourself, if you don't know Colombia and you see what's happened through its history, you ask yourself, how is it that Colombia has accomplished what it has accomplished? It's divided by the Andes, 70% of the population to the north, very rural to the south, characterized throughout its history from the colonial period to today by incredible levels of violence. And yet, its people are considered among the happiest, the most optimistic, entrepreneurial. And the ability of Colombia not just to, I think, achieve levels of development, sustain, I think, a democratic society, but to be able to project outside of its own borders and collaborate with the United States to achieve, I think, almost global status as recognized by the United States major non-NATO ally designation is nothing short of remarkable, particularly when you look at its neighbors and under, I think, smaller set of challenges, I think the limitations to what they've accomplished. But I'll say, to answer your question, is I think we really need to recognize the lessons of what have gotten us to this point, particularly in the bilateral relationship, but not let that constrain, I think, what is possible. And what I mean by that is that, and this is something that is really going to characterize a lot of what the president's going to talk about at the summit, is that we need to find ways to build upon the free trade agreements that we already have to make sure that we're responding to the needs of the people that were protesting well before the pandemic, that Colombia is not immune to polarization, just like the United States and other countries in the region are not immune to polarization, and that we need to respond to, I think, some of these, social inequities that really have characterized our societies. And I think the U.S. has an incredibly important role to play. I think Colombia has a lot to teach the region and the world about really economic stewardship in a democratic society. And frankly, those are conversations that when we talk to President Duque, he's somebody who's being very technocratic, already has 20 ideas about where we should be headed. But those are, how do you build on the free trade agreements to make sure that you're working toward reducing issues of inequity, promoting digital connectivity, to make sure that you're really facilitating the global energy transition, but also giving the tools that address some of the core challenges that not just the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean, but I would say Colombia has also experienced, but also really been, I think, innovating on. I think that's really a core area to focus on.
That's fantastic one. Now, Carolina, you're right about opportunities to collaborate in a global agenda as part of your essay. what do you see as opportunities specifically with regard to the multilateral and global context in which the relationship can be even further deepened?
Okay. No, I think when we hear the ambassador, when we hear everybody, our relationship and its strength comes from those shared values that we have of our founding fathers, of the defense of democracy, of civil rights, of responsibility towards others. And I think that is sort of the building block for our relationship and the kind of commitment we have had to work together, but also to approach global issues together. So in our defense of democracy, which we see that today with the horrible invasion of Ukraine by Russia, democracy still needs to be defended, and we still need to work and be aware. We have worked together as two countries in defending Korea. When Colombia was going through that moment where it was considered a possible failed state, we never felt it that way, but that situation was dire. The US came in with strategic help. It wasn't just the resources, it was the intelligence, it was the kind of support that we got to strengthen our democracy and our institutions, our justice, which was fundamental. And we also have worked together then to help the region. We have built our relationship so that we have gone into Central America to help with the training of police, of prosecutors, et cetera. So I think that we are taking this defense of democracy forward, and I see it working in a way where we are collaborating not only bilaterally, but regionally.
Thank you.
Our view, just one more?
Please. Yeah.
Okay, going to just to the multilateral. No, I think that another characteristic that we've had is, I think the pandemic has showed us how fundamental and how interconnected we are as a world, and that we do need some institutions and the multilateral space where we can meet to deal with these issues. And so, you know, Colombia and the US were founding members. Colombia continues to work very closely with the United Nations, was very instrumental in developing the SDGs, putting in the sustainability into the goals, and has looked at the UN as a place to have them come and monitor and help us in making sure that our peace agreement goes through. So I think that that view that we have of trying to work with the multilateral institutions, realize that we need that space to come together and to work, is also fundamental. And my last point was that we've also worked together on global issues, and given that I'm taking a little bit more time, I just wanted to stress, for example, the issue of climate change and sustainability. Colombia has an incredible experience of having been proactive and worked on its rainforest with the indigenous communities that have that knowledge of how to manage that fragile ecosystem. And President Duque has now brought together our neighbors to work on deforestation. So I think that by continuing to work together in a bilateral and a regional and a global way, this is the way that we can learn from these experiences.
Thank you. And you mentioned Ukraine, which is, of course, so important to the work of the United Council. We were talking about this earlier in the Green Room, Vice President Ramirez. You and President Duque were the first leaders in the region that really came out so strong in support of Ukraine when that invasion first happened. Kevin, you write about the need to broaden and deepen our work in governance matters, among other topics. Where do you see opportunities for deepening bilateral cooperation in the areas you tackle in your essay?
Thanks very much. Good evening to everyone, and Señora Vice Presidente, it's a pleasure to see you again. You know, I have to salute Ambassador Pinzón because he gave a classically American address. The first time I saw Juan Carlos give an address in Colombia, I was on the podium with him, and somebody handed him a folder with about 6 pages of paper in it, and I figured that's his speech. Actually, that was all the people he needed to recognize before the speech. So he's come a long way. Look, to me, this is about building on the successes of Plan Colombia. And when people speak about Plan Colombia, they often talk about, you know, hectares of coca eradicated, or, you know, the murder rate going down, or whatever it may be. Actually, the success of Plan Colombia was about institutional partnership and cooperation. And it's about 3 institutions in particular that I think we should look to build on those relationships in the future. The first is the security forces. The security forces in Colombia became increasingly professional, effective, and modern over the course of Plan Colombia. And their analytical framework and their doctrine increasingly resembled that of the United States. That makes the Colombian armed forces and the security forces interoperable in a way which is really unique in this region, in our hemisphere. And it's important to note this was a two-way street. Recently we were at an event where the successes of Operation Jaque, the rescue of the hostages, was noted. And our special forces who traveled to Colombia at that time noted that the Colombian special forces were their equal, if not their superior. The second is in the area of judicial cooperation, and it may be known to some that over the course of the 20 years, we've extradited about 2,000 Colombians to the United States. That requires enormous cooperation between Colombian prosecutors and investigators on the one hand, and American prosecutors and investigators on the other. Without the Colombian investigators and prosecutors, fiscales, without their excellence and their bravery, none of this would have been possible. And this relationship has brought advantages to Colombian justice system, the American justice system, and the victims as well. And the final area, and this is a unique one which I learned about when I was in Colombia in 2015. CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, came down looking for a partner to work on Zika, especially the effects on fetuses in women who contracted the disease. Having looked all over the hemisphere, they found the best human capital and the best equipment, the best kit in Colombia, and developed a fantastic relationship with the Colombian Ministry of Health. We've all just come through a terrible pandemic, hopefully, and everyone believes that another one may be in the offing. Having strong relationships with the Colombian Ministry of Health in the same way of institutional pairing, I think is an important way forward for us.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Now, Maria Clara, you call for the public and private sectors to work together to promote social development, work together, expand trade and investment, but you also have a broader perspective on how we can further deepen the relationship. Share that, please.
Thank you for the invitation, Jason, and the Atlantic Council to be part here of this book that really, for all Colombia, this is a great opportunity to show what we really have to offer. One of the things that we can summarize is the long-term view and the short-term success that we have built together between Colombia and the US. We have talked about democracy as one of the principles and values, but it's not only democracy, it's free market and it's freedom between the boundaries of the law. So those are actually the fundamentals of what we have shared, even and regardless of government and parties. One of the things that we have actually made possible is the confidence of that long-term views is that we have been able to create with long-term views short-term success. And those success are based in the way that we can provide people the confidence that democracy and free market are the ones that will achieve in order to get prosperity and to get social justice and opportunity and development. And one of those success and long-term views is the free trade agreement. And I cannot share some of the numbers that we have achieved through that long-term view and short-term success. Today we have a trade agreement that not only is giving Colombia an increase in export, we are a country that relies in petroleum and mining for many years, and today we can say that we are diversifying our exports to the United States with an increase of 53% of our export being in that area. Also, we have increased the number of companies that are exporting for the first time to the United States by 17%. And that have to be accompanied with the number of companies that is investing in Colombia. We have more than 450 American companies that are investing in our country, creating more than 110 million jobs in Colombia. And that's prosperity, that's equality, and that is part of what we have to construct between the United States and Colombia, not now, but in the next 200 years. What we need to emphasize is the development and the proactivity of the private sector into the relation. Together, we have to involve more the private sector in every step of the dialogue between the United States and Colombia in order to construct more on that commercial necessity and also to provide that democracy the result that is needed. if people feel that this democracy and free market are the one that is going to be achieving the prosperity, development, opportunity, we will construct a country that will allow us to increase.
It's so important, showing that democracy does deliver, that it does deliver
Exactly.
for the people and economic opportunity does. Cindy, over to you. We still haven't talked about Bruno yet, but over to you for that
All
round.
right,
two.
I'd love to talk about Bruno. Anyway, Jason and Camila and Eva, thank you so much for this partnership. Next time, I hope we'll do it with a little bit more time. But
Maybe
it was
5 months.
5 months. There you go. That'll give us a lot of breathing room. We've all seen the results of the election last Sunday. There is clearly a clamor for change among the Colombian electorate. As Juan Gonzalez was mentioning, there were protests in the streets in 2019, again in 2021. And if there is one main takeaway from what took place last Sunday, it is the desire for things to change. So my question and my challenge to all of you is to define not necessarily what's in your essay, but looking to the future of the US-Colombian relationship. What is one thing that, not just that you would carry forward from what has existed previously, but what is something that you would do differently, advise both the Colombian government or the US government to do differently? And why don't we just go in this order? I have that same question for all of you. So why don't we start with Kevin Whitaker?
Sure. Thanks very much. So I actually have two things, so I'll try to be concise with it. You know, I mentioned earlier that our judicial relationship is really unique and exceptional. I would actually argue that in some ways our insistence or interest on extradition has served as a brake on the development of the Colombian justice system in a way that it really needs to follow through. Colombian investigators and prosecutors, but also the judging phase and the punishment phase ultimately needs to be done all in Colombia. This is a push and pull matter, right? So the Colombians push and we pull. But I think in order for the Colombian justice system to achieve all that it can be, this extradition relationship probably needs to be moderated to a certain extent. I would just note here, I've already talked to DOJ about this, so I don't work for the U.S. government anymore, but I didn't hamstring anybody with this. The second part is this, and two of the people who are here with us today are both of my USAID directors, Peter Natiello and Larry Sachs, are some of the finest Foreign Service officers that I've ever worked with. One of the things that we always focused on was trying to integrate La Otra Colombia, La Colombia Profunda, the rural part of Colombia, the 100 or 200 municipalities out of 1,100 that are the source of so many problems, the narco-trafficking, illegal armed groups, illicit mining and illicit logging. Until those parts of the country are fully integrated, politically, economically, culturally, socially, physically, then they will continue to throw off these problems, which will result in graver problems for the society as a whole. So those are the two things that I would focus on.
Okay. Well, that's a very challenging question, Cynthia, but working on this purpose that we have of defending democracy and working with democracy, I think that going forward, we have to focus not only on the democratic system working, but the democratic system giving what is expected, going from the promises to the reality, to the concrete results. We need more accountability, and I think both of our governments need to work to see how there are ways that we can move in that direction, because what we're seeing is, as we find in the Edelman Trust Barometer or Latino Endometro, there's less and less trust in our governments year by year. In certain places, it's less than 30% of the people who believe in it. There's a feeling that democracy is for the elites. It's not reaching them. So I think what we need to change is, one, we need to make sure that the programs that we are talking about, that we're working on, are really concrete and are reaching out to that other Colombia, are reaching out to the rural areas, that it involves a wider conversation so that we are working much more with the youth, we're working with women, we're working with minorities. We need to involve the private sector much more. The private sector in all of these barometers of trust is seen in a much more positive way. It's seen as providing concrete results. So I think that kind of relationship becomes fundamental. And so I would then say that I think we need to work and strengthen our soft diplomacy also. I think working on greater educational programs so that we're reaching more of the youth, but we're also providing the new technological abilities. Secondly, we need to strengthen then our work in the health area. As we have now seen, we can provide much better services if we are able to connect not only with the companies, but also to provide services through connectivity through the internet. We need to work even very much on, I think that by building exchanges. The Peace Corps was fantastic in building trust between our countries, and we need more exchanges among teachers and entrepreneurs and students. This is what builds that strength for us to move forward. So, and not less and not least at all is culture. It shows our diversity, but it also shows our dissimilarity. So I think that working much more on soft diplomacy will be very important in greater productivity, greater trust, which will allow us to strengthen our relationship and provide a democracy that is providing what people expect.
So, I mean, I think what I would do differently in hindsight is really the drug question. Because to many Colombian Americans, if you leave somewhere, if you leave Washington, you introduce yourself as a Colombian American, you know, everybody's used to the cocaine joke, right? And we're all tired of it, but that is often how people view Colombia. And I think frankly that we should have started earlier to de-narcotize the relationship. And I think really pay respect to what Ambassador Whitaker, Ambassador McKinley really sought to do, to think about a broader set of interests beyond just eradication. But I think that ultimately the question of eradication was never seen as a long-term goal. It was seen as something that would create a space for everything that you've talked about, having the government and establish kind of the presence of the state, creating an opportunity to create for the private sector to come in. And it became something that almost became a metric in itself. The number of extraditions and the hectares of coca that were eradicated became a measure of success, and less so, I think, how we were actually meaningfully introducing opportunity in some of these communities. I'm not understating how difficult it is to do this, how much effort the United States under Republican and Democratic administrations really sought to try to build a center of kind of institutionality and opportunity in support of the Colombian government south of the Andean region. But I do think that nowadays, particularly as you look at some of the debates that are having in Colombia, we've sought to do this with the current government. In the meeting between the president and President Duque, we sought to really kind of open the aperture a little bit and talk about a broader set of interests that we have with Colombia, because we understand that as Colombian society starts thinking about where its interests lie, we need to speak to the Colombian population about something more than just drugs, and really what the opportunities are for a country as entrepreneurial and as ambitious as Colombia.
I would not say that we have to change, but more, I would say we have to evolve things that are related to cooperation and with economical aid. Colombia, I don't know if most of you know, but Colombia is the #1 recipient of United States aid in Latin America since 1946, which means a very long time ago we have been receiving economical aid from the United States, but emphasizing in areas of security, which is very important and have to continue. But we have to evolve that economic aid into social and commercial aid that allows companies to fortify and strengthen their production and competitiveness that we have. Today we are seeing that evolving, and thanks to the work that the government is doing here in the United States, Ambassador Pinzón and Vice President Marta Lucía Ramirez, but also the job that is doing the US government in helping in the cooperation. And some of the idea that we can evolve that cooperation is, for example, in a world that may face a food shortage, Colombia has nearly 29 million hectares ready to be developed, but need to be updated in irrigation, technology, and productivity, and improvement of competitiveness. Colombia can be a tourist powerhouse, but it needs infrastructure, and also it needs personnel that speak a second language, for example, English. Colombia lacks of infrastructure. It needs to maintain the existing one, but it needs to further expand the one that we have. Colombia is a country of a small and actually micro and small companies. 90% of Colombia is based on micro and small companies. And they need investment, they need to fortify the productivity, and they need to fortify the productivity to increase. So those are part of what we can evolve the economic aid in order to provide Colombia the prosperity that the people need in order to believe that democracy, free markets, and freedom is the one that we have to achieve.
Well, thank you so much, Maria Claudia. Thank you, Cindy, for co-writing this. Thank you, Juan, Carolina, Kevin. We've just given you a preview of 3 of the 27 essays that we did in 20, 25 minutes. So if you want to pull an all-nighter tonight and read the rest of the book, you're welcome to do so. I want to also, before leaving the stage again, thank Ambassador Pinzón, Vice President Ramirez for being here today, and all the ambassadors that are here with us today. I'd like to now welcome to the stage my colleague Camila Hernandez, who leads our Colombia programming and will provide an overview of the book. So thank you all very much.
Can we go this way?
Gracias, Jason. I would like to start by thanking the nearly 30 thought leaders who provided forward-looking essays and their ideas. They're all featured in this book. Their work and commitment to strengthening US-Colombia ties is reflected in these pages. To Jason and Cindy, who co-authored the book with me, thank you. To Eva, thank you as well. Allies is the product of many months, many weekends, many late nights, but the hard work paid off, not only because of the end product, but also because of the contributions that this book will make to the future, to the next 200 years of US-Colombia relations. For me, in particular, this book was personal. As a Colombian in the United States, having experienced the fruits of a strong US-Colombia partnership, it was my way of giving back to my country, de poner mi granito de arena. When I arrived to the United States back in 2014, I would have never thought I had the opportunity to work with many visionaries who built this relationship. If I have learned something in my time at the Atlantic Council and while editing this book, it is this: our future is brighter and more hopeful than ever before. This book is a celebration of our strong US-Colombia partnership. It is also a recognition of how far we have come and the immense potential that remains. It is an invitation to think boldly and creatively about our relationship, but it is also an invitation to take action. Implementing the many ideas and recommendations in this book will contribute to a more prosperous, sustainable, and inclusive future for all. As Fred mentioned, please feel free to take a copy of the book home. Also, you have QR codes in your seat. Feel free to scan them. We have online copies of the book as well, and if you want to pre-order more print versions of the book, you can do so as well. The video that we'll play shortly is a preview of the book and its 7 chapters. It is also my debut as a voiceover artist, so, and following the video, I will welcome book author and a fellow Caleña, Leila Cobo. She is the VP for Latin industry at Billboards. Leila is an author in the book, and she will read an excerpt of her excellent essay. So Leila, thank you for joining us today, and it was a pleasure to work with you. And with this, here's the preview of the book. In the past 2 decades, Colombia has become one of the United States' most strategic allies. As we celebrate 200 years of US-Colombia diplomatic relations, it is time to think boldly and creatively about the future of this partnership. The Atlantic Council and the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars convened nearly 40 thought leaders in both countries to outline how to deepen bilateral ties. From President Bill Clinton to Howard Buffett to John Leguizamo, the voice of Bruno in Encanto, their ideas are reflected in the book Allies, 27 Bold Ideas to Reimagine the US-Colombia Relationship. Released in June 2022, the book sets the foundation for a stronger US partnership with Colombia in 7 areas: tackling global issues, enhancing shared security, strengthening democracy and the rule of law, promoting inclusive economic growth, protecting the environment and mitigating climate change, addressing internal displacement and migration, advancing STEM and the arts. Read the full book online. Leila, bienvenida.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me. Well, first of all, let's please give a round of applause for Camila, who's a real rock star. I know she's been behind this book. She certainly was behind me being here. I feel very honored to be here among all these brilliant minds in this book. I'm a little bit of an outlier in this group. My expertise is entertainment and music, but in the past 20 years that I've been with Billboard, which is a global music brand, my big goal and my big advocacy is ensuring that as Latin Americans and as Colombians, because I have a huge bias, obviously, we are recognized and we are seen. And we are recognized and we are seen in a different way, and that way is through music and through our accomplishments in music. So this essay is very personal. I'm going to read you a very abbreviated, it's gonna skip, an abbreviated version of the first part of the essay. It is brief, I promise you, and it is called Recognize the Power of Music. When I was growing up in the pre-internet 1980s in Cali, Colombia, my father subscribed to Time magazine, and every week the shiny, ostensible purveyor of everything that was of import in the world arrived in the mail. I'd scour Time in search of any news, good, bad, whatever, about Colombia. Save for an occasional natural disaster reviewed in a paragraph or two, there never was any. Until Pablo Escobar became the world's anti-hero in the late 1980s, and except for Gabriel Garcia Marquez's Nobel Prize for Literature in 1982, Colombia was mostly absent from global and certainly from US consciousness. When I auditioned for the Manhattan School of Music, a female professor considered one of the leading pianists of her generation asked me, "You're from Colombia? I have a good friend from Argentina. Perhaps you know her?" Alas, I did not. But I understood then that even though the distance from Miami to Cartagena is a mere 1,100 miles, while Buenos Aires is 4,410 miles, for many in the Northern Hemisphere, anything south of Mexico was one big blob of sameness, unremarkable save for the extremes of tragedy and crime. And then the music came. Music has long been the great equalizer. Historically, it has crossed barriers of race, class, politics, nationality, and language, with music in English, the world's vast lingua franca, consumed by people from around the world. Thanks in no small measure to a growing contingent of Colombian superstars that includes Shakira, Juanes, Maluma, Camilo, and J Balvin, music in Spanish has also sliced the language barrier and is listened to broadly by non-Spanish speakers worldwide. How did this happen? Our circumstance, and I wrote this, I'm sorry. Our circumstance as a country in near perpetual conflict favored the development of music as an alternative, an outlet, and a solution. Yet music was long insular in Colombia. We listened to local acts and imports from the US, Spain, Argentina, and Mexico, as did most Latin Americans. Colombia was a depository of music from other places, but our own rhythms and beats were regarded as too Colombian, ever to be appreciated outside the confines of our borders. Seeing this passionately, the evolution of Shakira is almost miraculous. As a young girl growing up in Colombia in the 1980s and 1990s, there was no one she could artistically emulate or aspire to, and no industry to viably support her brand of youth-oriented, slightly rebellious rock. Shakira not only managed to set foot outside Colombia into other Spanish-language countries, but improbably she pierced the veil of mainstream acceptance. Becoming a global superstar who sang in English, recognized on equal footing with artists like Madonna and Ricky Martin in their heyday. It had never happened before to one of us. Once Shakira was able to break that barrier, possibilities unfolded for new generations. After all, the musical movement born out of Medellin is a post-narco phenomenon, fueled by young artists who sought to depict their social malaise through music and strove to get ahead through musical art that came from their very own streets and culture rather than through violence or conformism. When J Balvin showed molas, palenqueras, and chivas in his video of Mi Gente, he served as the de facto ambassador for Colombian culture and folklore, placing it on a platform that allowed for its mass consumption. When Maluma tattooed the word Medellin on his famous chest and sang using the colloquial language of his city streets, he turned preconceived notions of Latin crooners on their heads, offering the image of the singer as a patriotic symbol instead. When Camilo sings, "No es vida de rico, pero se pasa bien rico," he speaks not just for millions of young Colombians, but for the millions of young Spanish speakers who tackled their struggles with humor. Yet, until a few years ago, the fact that musicians were leading the fray in terms of raising Colombia's visibility abroad was widely discounted. Until relatively recently, music was seen as mostly a trivial pursuit, certainly not a real career, and unworthy of serious consideration by influential decision makers and politicians. Except musicians overall have become the decision makers, and Colombian musicians in particular have become global leaders. This is obvious not just in terms of fame, which is easily measurable nowadays by the number of social media followers and music streams and downloads, but also in terms of tangible social and economic impact and influence. Colombian musicians today are the single most recognized ambassadors of the country's culture, folklore, and traditions, and they are also vocal agents of change. And you have to read the rest. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please turn your attention to the screen for a video message from the President of Colombia, Ivan Duque.
My greetings to Fred Kemp, President and CEO of the Atlantic Council, to Adrian Arsh, Executive Vice Chair and founder of the Adrian Arsh Latin American Center, to Ambassador Mark Green, President and CEO of the Wilson Center, and to Juan Gonzalez, Senior Director of Western Hemisphere of the National Security Council, and to all those who gather here today. I am pleased to participate in the launch of the book Allies, 27 Bold Ideas to Reimagine the US-Colombia Relationship. Actually, these 200 years of bilateral relations that have proven fruitful require that we think about how to continue to strengthen these ties well into the future. Documents like this, one, are extremely relevant for its study, reflection, and consideration. Today, it's more than ever the time to analyze the opportunities we could realize in the years to come. Challenges such as those brought by the COVID-19 pandemic have shown that no country can unilaterally tackle all the issues currently faced by humanity. On the contrary, states need multilateral tools and bilateral relations to do so, which is what the United States and Colombia have been working on all these years. In view of this, we've strengthened commercial and security issues as we've given way to other aspects like the crisis brought on by global warming and migration phenomena. Likewise, in managing the pandemic, the United States has been a great ally to Colombia in areas like the donation of millions of vaccines. In the same vein, the Atlantic Council has been a space conducive to strengthening this relationship. Your reports and impactful recommendations highlight Colombia's progress in areas like security, peace with legality, the response to the Venezuelan migration crisis, and economic reactivation after the pandemic. Likewise, it's been the scenario where the democratic values shared by our two nations have been strengthened. Colombia is one of the oldest democracies in the Americas. Strengthening our bilateral relations assures that democracy and the rule of law are the protagonists of our society's development. I wish you success today. I commend the Atlantic Council for this publication that will surely prove very important to continue strengthening the ties between our two nations. Thank you very much, and I look forward to reading this amazing book that brings together the minds, the thoughts, and also the values of many important citizens who have served to strengthen our bilateral relations. All the best.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Atlantic Council Executive Vice Chair and founder of the Adrian Arsh Latin America Center and Adrian Arsh Rockefeller Foundation Resilience Center, Adrian Arsh.
I say good evening, everyone, because I can't list even half of what the ambassador did. And who's here, each one of you is so special and so important to the mission of focusing on this 200 years of the relationship and the many centuries that we will move forward. I wanted to make a special comment as I heard Leila's remarks. You keyed into perhaps, I'd say, the reason I founded the Adrian Arsh Latin America Center, so that no one would confuse Cartagena and Buenos Aires. We're getting there, and I know Juan and those of you who will be at the Summit of the Americas will make sure that the voices are loud for the rest of the world to recognize the importance of this hemisphere. And now, just a few remarks. I wanted to say that this evening is just so special when you think of what was accomplished. This book, 4 months, and it's really good. And to premiere it here at the Library of Congress, what better place? But more to the point, I think that this will launch all of us to think of what we've accomplished so far and ideas, as Jason asked the panelists, for the future. And I'd like to also key off something Jason said. about staying up all night reading this? You know, if you have good Colombian coffee, you can do that. I didn't write a large essay, but I did put in a few remarks on the back cover, which go to the fact that my personal long-standing commitment to Colombia and the bilateral alliance is as strong as ever. I wear very, very proudly this medal recognizing the 200 years of this friendship, and also a medal recognizing, in a sense, my devotion to the country. I am also pleased by this very, very strong commitment of the Adrian Arsh Latin America Center for further advancing our ties through the launch of this book, and also with the Woodrow Wilson Center, to support the work of the US-Colombia Task Force, which really prompted all of us to think further about this and to make a difference. And now, to provide further perspective on our relationship as we celebrate the bicentennial, I am delighted to welcome Vice President and Foreign Affairs Minister of Colombia, Marta Lucia Ramirez. In the last 4 years, your administration has demonstrated notable leadership, welcoming nearly 2 million Venezuelan migrants with open arms and ensuring efficient and equitable COVID-19 vaccine distribution. And so, with that as a basis, Vice President Ramirez, thank you for joining us. Please come to the stage.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to thank all of you for joining us, and especially for having this wonderful idea to have this book, which is going to be not only a testimony of a lot of very smart people, but also a testimony of our coherence in this commitment to work together for the good of Colombians, the Americans, and all the citizens in this important hemisphere. I would like to thank Fred Kemp, President and CEO of Atlantic Council. Adrian, thank you so much for your introduction. I also would like to thank Ambassador Mark Green for all your commitment with Colombia for many, many years. Dear Juan Gonzalez, you as a Colombo-American, you have the knowledge, but also the youth to work very hard for a long, long time in order to have a good results of this strategic alliance. Thank you, Ambassador Kevin Whitaker, and also Ambassador Mike McKinley, for all your efforts and also for your commitment with our country. Ambassador Carolina Barco, former foreign minister and a wonderful leader in Colombia. Maria Claudia Lacouture, Executive Director of the Colombian American Chamber of Commerce. Jason Marzak, thank you so much for all your efforts, and I would like to congratulate you, Cindy, and of course Camila, because you did a wonderful job in only 3 months. I have heard this is unbelievable, this wonderful book in only 3 months. Congratulations. Leila, thank you also for your comments, and as you mentioned, we feel so proud of all this creativity in the very young talent that we have in Colombia, men and women, but you underline Shakira was the first, and it's so important that we remember she was a woman breaking ceiling glasses in the culture and of course in the entertaining industry. Ambassador Juan Carlos Pinzón, thank you and congratulations for all the efforts that you have been doing for the strengthening of this bilateral relation in this new opportunity, but also in the past when you were also the ambassador here in the United States, Flaya Santoro, president of ProColombia. You have been working also so hard in order to promote the Colombian exports to the United States and also the American investment in Colombia in different sectors. Larry, thank you also for all your commitment in all these PEDET zones and also in the commitment with the rural women in Colombia. All the staff from the Atlantic Council and the Wilson Center who made this possible, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure for me, it's a privilege to be here today on behalf of President Duque and the Colombian fellow citizens for the release of the book, which will greatly contribute for us to look ahead at the future of the Colombian-US relations. The list of dignitaries from both our countries who contributed to this book is truly impressive. Any book that starts with an article from Bill Clinton and ends with one from John Leguizamo is a must-read. President Duque, myself, and our fellow Colombians are very grateful for the time and thought that you all put into this book. Paula Dobronsky also. There are so many talent and knowledge people who collaborate in these 27 ideas for the future of our relation. We are similarly grateful for the Atlantic Council team for putting this remarkable compendium of articles together. You have been and will remain tremendous partners in the US-Colombian bilateral relation. Furthermore, a glance at the authors of the article shows the bipartisan, bicameral support that is foundational in our relation, based, as many others said before me, is based on common values, rule of law, freedom, defense of democracy for the improvement of economic and social conditions of life for all our citizens. This is my 4th trip to the United States this year. During these trips, I have had the chance to celebrate our 200 years through one-on-one meetings and at events that cover a host of important topics for our bilateral relationship, ranging from security to trade and economics to the energy transition to addressing climate change, and of course, gender equality. On each trip, the broad scope of our common agenda always reminds me of our history and how we have grown to be the strong partners and friends that we are today. It is a history rooted in shared core values, a history that extends well beyond relations at the government level and to deepen ties between our peoples, our citizens, who are, after all, at the heart of what makes our relations so special. Yes, much has been said about our history as we celebrate the bicentennial of our diplomatic relationship. History is important, of course, but it is the future that this book examines and what I want to talk about today. Enhancing shared security, strengthening democratic institutions, deepening dignity in the lives of our citizens through inclusive economic growth, protecting the environment and mitigating climate change, addressing internal displacement and migration, advancing in STEM careers and arts for all citizens. The issues that are key to our future shared success don't get bigger than this. We are looking forward to the Summit of the Americas next week. The summit will be maybe the last chance to consider the future path of our region, taking into consideration that migration is not a problem, it's a consequence of a real problem. The lack of opportunities for our citizens in this hemisphere due to the lack of regional economic integration that have strategic value-added chains to attend the market demand in all the 32 countries of our hemisphere. The future of our region depends on our capacity of facing together an array of shared problems and challenges that our governments haven't assumed together with a sense of common purpose. We need to go back to President Kennedy's proposal of the ideals of an alliance for all the Americans' progress. We, like all nations in the entire world, are suffering the consequences of the triple clash: COVID-19, the last 4 years of serious damages and losing of lives because of climate change, and of course, the price inflation derived from the horrible Russian war against Ukraine. Our countries are facing an acid test to strengthen the efficiency and transparency of the states, to have a more ambitious economic repowering, to create millions of new jobs, to bring social stability. We have the opportunity next week, during the 9th Summit of the Americas, to reassume efforts to tackle a common and more ambitious ideas about how to develop concrete actions for development on the Americas based on the common purpose of progress for all. As we discussed with President Biden when he invited President Ivan Duque in March, we want Colombia to be one of the reference models of building back better world. We have projects that are advancing in clean energy, climate adaptation, infrastructure, and of course we want to continue to set an example for other countries in Latin America about how to recover and how to relaunch our economy, how to diversify, and how to strengthen all the regions for the creation of jobs. This is the main priority. We also hope that we serve as a role model for how to address future migration challenges. The temporary protected status for Venezuelans is granting 1.8 million Venezuelans migrants in our territory that they will allow to come out of the shadow. They can contribute also to the Colombian economy, but mostly they can improve their lives and livelihoods. Addressing climate change will loom large on our future bilateral agenda. Of course, it's something that several articles address in this book. Together, we are working to protect Colombian natural areas. This is one of the President Duque initiatives, which has been very successful, and it's going to create also this leadership of Colombia in international scenarios. And now we have this commitment to protect natural areas both on land and on the sea. By August 2022, we will have 30% of the Colombian territory declared a protected area with the US support, and we are also restoring 1 million corals and protecting the mangroves in very important zones of our country. And on the international level, we will not want until 2030 to meet the 30 by 30 criteria. As our ambassador to Washington, Juan Carlos Pinzón, writes in his article, we know that consolidating peace and stability in Colombia is a shared goal for our collective future. Of course, so too is a bilateral agenda that focuses on reducing inequality, promoting opportunities, and including women in economic and political power as a precondition to defeat extreme poverty. Because at the end, this is the real goal: how to defeat extreme poverty, how to reduce poverty in Colombia and in the rest of Latin America. When I mention women and gender equality, let me say that President Duque government have been working so hard in order to empower economically women in the rural areas, women in the urban areas. And here we have the president of Federación Nacional de Cafeteros. He launched a wonderful program 3 years ago. And let me say, we have in Colombia 600,000 of coffee farms in Colombia. But nowadays, 178,000 farms owns to women. Those are coffee women who are developing new coffee, soft coffee, and they are having their own brands in the international market. This is the idea that we have for promoting gender equality. It's not giving only subsidies is not charity for women, it's giving women an opportunity to develop the economy and to create jobs in the rural areas, but also in the Colombian cities. If we can reduce inequality, if we promote opportunities and include women, we are absolutely sure that we will fulfill this goal to eliminate extreme poverty in Colombia and to reduce poverty, and of course to achieve social prosperity through this creation of jobs and the support of scalable and profitable new entrepreneurship in the best tool to undermine populism, authoritarianism, and of course the illicit economies that threaten our shared security. Education and development, including in the high-demand STEM fields, play a critical role in charging our future. Student exchanges and higher quality education for Colombians, especially in the digital and programming fields, and the English language instruction will contribute to a more skilled and competitive labor force. And let us not forget the powerful role of the arts, from authors like Gabriel Garcia Marquez to great musicians like Maluma, Carol, Shakira, Juanes, Carlos Vives, Fonseca, and of course movies like Encanto. Cultural diplomacy has and will continue to be a tie that binds us, our countries. When we met with President Biden in March, he launched, of course, this Colombian-United States bicentennial partnership, declaring Colombia as a major non-NATO ally, as Ambassador Juan Carlos Pinzón mentioned. And what it means, and that there is a reliable relation, that this is a relation based in principles, but of course in confidence. And we are absolutely convinced that this program will create a new stage in this bilateral relation, not only to work for the common security of our countries, but also to defeat illegal activities in the region and to work together for security of other countries in our region. Let me say that while much of Latin America has been economically stagnant for nearly a decade and authoritarianism is on the rise, with so many disturbing evidence of political polarization, corruption, and dictatorship, Colombia has been improving on so many indicators, but we have to show better to our own citizens that we have a solid state and institutions to guarantee a better conditions of life for all of them under the rules of democracy and a social market-based economy. I like very much when you mentioned the free trade agreements, but it's something that we need to improve. It's not only free trade, it's the creation of more and more jobs through a competitive private sector, which is based in so many small and medium-sized companies in our country. Not only Latin America and the Caribbean need a solid United States. The United States also needs a solid, productive, and developed region to maximize opportunities for all, but also in order to contain risks to diminish their influence on a global basis. We need to stand each other to stop new waves of migration and the transnational criminal groups of narco-trafficking, human trafficking, arms trafficking, and money laundering. As many authors have mentioned in the book, Colombia is a reliable partner for the United States when we all must reduce risks on democracy's stability, social and economic gaps in the region, and the unknown final consequences of the triple shock suffered for all the nations. Finally, I thank Ambassador Goldberg for his dedicated and loyal and respectful and effective work in Colombia in the last 4 years. Now he's leaving Colombia, he will be in South Korea, and we are expecting very much the arrival of the new ambassador, Jean Maines, that hopefully will be in Colombia as soon as possible. We know that she has a wonderful career also, so for us, she will be the second women ambassador in Colombia, and we are expecting her with enthusiasm. As I mentioned before, for me it's an honor to be here on behalf of President Duque and the Colombian citizens, and I am grateful for this opportunity to be here commemorating the 200 years of history and consolidating the basis for the next 200 years of a bright Colombia-US mutual cooperation and mutual progress. Thank you very much, Jason, and all of you for this book.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome President and CEO of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars, Ambassador Mark Green, to close the event.
So it falls to me to offer just a few very brief thoughts. First and foremost, we are proud to have worked with the Atlantic Council, and thank you, Fred, so much. It's been a great collaboration for a work that analyzes and celebrates 200 years of US-Colombia relations. So why are we here tonight in the house that Jefferson dreamt of and inspired? Because the US has many allies and partners around the world, but only a small number of nations that can be called true friends, and Colombia is in that small number. The US and Colombia are bound together by history and culture. We are bound together through economic ties and a shared belief in private enterprise and inclusive economic development. In addition to the landmark anniversary of 200 years, there is also the 10th anniversary of the US-Colombia Free Trade Agreement. During that time, Colombia has risen to become our 25th largest trading partner, a member of the OECD, and a major non-NATO ally. We are bound together as partners in tackling transnational challenges, the scourge of narcotics, the rise of authoritarian forces, the persistence of economic inequality, the consequences and causes of climate extremes, and the fallout from forced human displacement. But more than anything else, as we have heard over and over again tonight, we are bound together by a set of shared values, an unwavering belief that democracy, liberty, and human dignity are every person's birthright. When I became administrator of USAID, little did I know that I would visit the country 5 times. Larry probably thought it was 25 times. But as I look back on it, what brought me back over and over again were not just the challenges that we all saw, like the tragedy of Venezuela's economic and authoritarian descent, but the opportunities that we all saw, working with our Colombian friends to lift lives and build communities and expand hope. And so we partnered with the Duque administration to extend the formalization of land titles into rural communities, to support community-based projects that are alternatives to the illegal drug trade, to strengthen biodiversity protections, increase the inclusion of Afro-Colombians and others. President Duque inherited a country that was divided over the peace accords. And since then, it has borne the brunt of the largest mass migration event in the history of the Americas. And of course, like others, it was hit hard by COVID-19. Madam Vice President, it's good to see you again. It hasn't always been easy, but the steady hand of the Duque administration helped steer Colombia through these complex times, and the U.S. has been proud to walk with you along the way. One of the most important themes in this book is the extraordinary bipartisanship that has characterized the U.S. approach to Colombia. It has carried us across administrations, multiple administrations, ours and theirs. This same approach will be needed in the coming years to hold on to those future opportunities that we all aim for. We cannot take bipartisanship for granted. We cannot take that future for granted. And we won't, because we are allies, because we are partners, but most importantly, because we are close and true friends. Thank you.